Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the channel. Welcome to the page. I hope you're all having a fantastic Friday. My name is Adam with LAHC, and welcome to another episode of our Bobvin Life Skills Winter Series. Last week, we talked about self-image and self-improvement, and so today's probably going to be a little bit of an extension of that, because a big part of self-improvement is going to be in line with some of the decisions that we may make and some of the goals that we may set. So today's lesson is kind of a little bit about both decision making and goal setting. And so we'll go through a couple ways in which we can make the best decisions for ourselves and we can set the best goals for ourselves. So right out the bat, we're going to go ahead and jump into the lesson, and we're going to talk about a decision-making model called PROPS. So this is an acronym, meaning every letter in the word stands for something. And for PROPS, these letters are pause, reflect, going over the options, prioritizing, and then selecting the best options for us. And this can be a really useful tool when we have to make some of those really big adult decisions sometimes. So we'll use the prop scenario to work through a dilemma involving a high school student who's in the bathroom around lunchtime with her friends. So Amanda's in the bathroom with her friends, and one of them pulls out a vape pen. The friend takes a hit and starts passing the vape pen around. Everyone takes a hit, and then the vape comes to Amanda. Now Amanda's aware of the health effects and the damages that can be caused by vaping. She's also aware that if a teacher walks into the bathroom, they can all get in trouble. At the same time, she really doesn't want her friends to make fun of her or think that she's chickening out of it. And so your typical high school peer pressure scenario where you could be caught in a trying situation. And so using the PROPS decision-making model, we can kind of help Amanda figure out what she can do. So first, what you want to do is you want to pause and take a step back and have a positive attitude. Trying to make a decision out of emotions, whether you're feeling stressed or angry or upset, can make the decision-making process a lot harder. It can make it harder for you to make a more informed decision or the best decision for yourself. So that'll be the first step. And then following that, you want to reflect on what exactly it is that you're trying to decide on. What is the problem going on, and how are you going to decide that? And you'll look at some of the different options that are presented to you. And you want to look at both the pros and the cons of each option. So what are going to be some benefits to the options? What are going to be the pros? And so if Amanda stays in the bathroom with her friends and ends up vaping, what's going to be the good and the bad that comes out of that? If she leaves the bathroom, what's going to be the benefit of that, and what are going to be some of the risks? So the SMART model would look a little bit something like this. And so I know it looks like a lot, but I kind of filled in most of this for the sake of time. And so we can kind of look at our options, and we can look at the pros and cons of each option and verify whether it's supporting Amanda's health and her reputation, or if it's going to be compromising that. So the first option Amanda has is she could take a hit. Now, the only benefit I can think of for this is that her friends would probably think she's cool and rebellious. But then we look at the cons of this option, and we see there's a lot more. One of them being that the teacher could walk in and they could all get in trouble, including Amanda. Her friends will probably think that, Amanda's going to do anything we tell her to do, which could also be a very negative thing if people start to think that they can walk all over you. Lastly, there is health risks associated with vaping, and there's also the risk of becoming addicted. And so when we want to look at our values, in terms of Amanda's health, it doesn't look like there's a lot of benefit to her caving to the peer pressure and taking a hit of a potentially addictive substance. And so this doesn't support our value, but rather it compromises it. Now, when we look at Amanda's reputation, We do think that her friends might think she's cool and rebellious, but at the same time, there is a risk that her friends will think that she'll do anything they tell her to do. And that can also be pretty bad for your reputation, because people will be convinced that you'll do anything for attention. And that can be also kind of a negative thing. So that would compromise the value, but we do want to think about also, her friends might think she's cool and rebellious. So we'll leave a little X right over here. Let's look at our second option. She doesn't take a hit, but instead just walks out of the bathroom. And so right away you can see there's more pros to this than cons. She's protecting her health. She's avoiding getting in trouble by getting caught. And not to mention, some of the people in her friend group might actually respect her for not caving into peer pressure. And you see it a lot of times in high school. Some people can become popular just for being who they are and being true to themselves, and not really caving or wavering or changing their opinions or their feelings or their actions to appease other people or to make other people happy. Now, of course, there's also the risk that some of her friends might think she's uncool, not very cool for leaving, and potentially losing those friends. So first we want to look at our health. So Amanda's health is going to be supported by this. She's not engaging in anything that's going to affect her negatively in any way, and she's backing out of a scenario where she could potentially even be affected by secondhand vape. Which is kind of like secondhand smoke, but a little bit less intense. And so we are supporting Amanda's health. Now we look at her reputation. And this kind of depends on what you view reputation as. For me personally, I would say that this does generally support her reputation as well. Although if she does care about and value the opinion of the friends who might ridicule her or think she's not cool for leaving, then that could potentially compromise her reputation as well. And so we'll leave a little X over there for Amanda. I got you, girl. Now we'll look at our third option. She doesn't take a hit, but she decides to stay in the bathroom with her friends. So we're protecting our health still, protecting her reputation with her friends, not to mention being around people who are doing something and not doing it can be a very strong workout for our self-control, which is a really important skill to have and to develop as you get older. And so that's a pretty big part of it as well. But we also see we have the same amount of cons to this. And so, or roughly the same amount of cons to it, that a teacher could still punish her for being in the bathroom with them, so she could still get in trouble regardless whether she's vaping or not. Not to mention, her friends could continue to press and persist on her to try to vape until she eventually caves in. And that's a big part of peer pressure. Is a lot of times it's persistence, it's nagging the person until they do what you want them to do. And so let's look at her health. In a sense, we are protecting Amanda's health and we are protecting her reputation with her friends. We're also strengthening her self-control. And so I would say we are supporting her health. Even though there is the risk of secondhand vape, it's not very significant to where it would be compromising her health. But if we think about Amanda's reputation, we are still supporting her reputation, but she could still get in trouble. And so this is kind of a difficult situation to be in, because it does look like her reputation is being supported as well, even though it does compromise her reputation with the teachers, which if you're in high school, you want to have a good reputation with your friends, but you also want to have a decent reputation with the teachers at least. Now, we kind of have all our options. We have our pros and cons. And then we want to prioritize. And so we want to look at which option is going to be best in line with what we value and what we care about. And so looking at this, both our health and our reputation are being compromised. So option 1 is a no-go, considering Amanda cares for her health and her reputation. So that leaves us with options 2 and 3. And we have the same exact values for each of these. And so it's supporting the value for both of these options. Taking a hit is not it. But not taking a hit and walking out is a good option. But also not taking a hit but deciding to stay is also a good option. And so now this is where we look at the pros and cons, and we consider which pros do we prefer and which cons can we live with. And so in this case, if she does stay in the bathroom but doesn't take a hit, there's a risk of a teacher walking in and her getting in trouble, and there's also the risk that she could potentially cave into that peer pressure. So right away, it's not looking very promising over here. Whereas if we look at option 2, she doesn't take a hit and walks out. The only con of that is some of her friends might think she's uncool for leaving. And my argument, for this is, if your friends are going to make fun of you for not doing something that could damage or affect your health, these are probably not friends that you want to be around. Essentially, you want to surround yourself with people who champion you, who want the best for you, and generally won't be trying to get you to vape or get in trouble in the school bathroom. And so it's starting to look like option 2 would be our best bet. And so we go ahead and go with that. And that's what the S stands for: selecting, choosing the best option for us and reviewing the results. Now, of course, for the props scenarios, you don't always have to write everything down, but I do think that it helps a little bit to kind of visualize how the process goes. Now, a lot of the grown-up decisions that we make are going to require this level of careful thought and consideration. And so it's really important that you have all the information you need before making a decision so that you can actually accurately think through the decision. And it's also okay to have differing decisions or different options than your friends or family members or your peers, because each one of us has different priorities and different things we care about. And so that's totally okay to make a different decision than somebody else in your friend circle. Now, one of the biggest decisions we make that also help us towards self-improvement are some of the goals that we choose to pursue. But a lot of times we might set a goal that's too far-fetched, a little bit too big for us. And we might end up intimidating ourselves out of accomplishing this goal. And so there is a different way to accomplish goals, and we call it the smarter way. Now, before getting into this, what's the importance of goal setting? So for most successful people, a lot of times they set goals, small, manageable goals for every day or every week. And this is very important for success, but for the average Joe like me, a lot of times we often make the mistake of setting really big goals. I want to make $1 million, or I want to become a professional athlete, or I want to go to Harvard. Now, granted, these are really good goals to have, but they're a little bit too big to be manageable. And over time, we end up scaring ourselves out of the will to achieve them, or we end up becoming demotivated to achieve these goals. But if we take this big, unmanageable goal and kind of break it down into a series of smaller, kind of manageable chunks, we're better able to ensure that we follow through with that goal and we don't get demotivated, we don't end up giving up. So typically we set a really big goal for ourselves, like, I have a goal to lose weight. So you're looking up a staircase at the top floor and you're thinking to yourself, I can make this jump. There's a very, very good chance that you're going to fall and bust your nose, and it's not going to be fun for you. But when we're being smart about our goals, we're able to specify exactly what we want to accomplish and the steps that we can take to do that. So SMART is kind of like props. It is an acronym, and so each letter in the word stands for something. And over here, SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and relevant, and time-bound. And here's what each one of these means. So the first step is to specify what exactly you're trying to accomplish. Instead of vaguely telling yourself, I want to lose weight, it would be better for you to ask yourself something like, how much weight am I trying to lose? When would be a good benchmark day for me to lose this weight? How am I going to go about losing this weight? And so a little bit more specific of a goal would sound something like, I'd like to lose 5 to 10 pounds in the next month, and here are the steps that I'm going to do. I'm going to eat this, I'm going to exercise this many days in the week, making it kind of more specific to what you want to accomplish, how you're going to do so. Next, you want a way to measure your progress. And measuring the amount of weight you're losing can be done by weighing yourself weekly, doing a weekly weigh-in and tracking the difference. It's very important in the measuring process to actually keep track of your progress and how far you're moving along. And the same thing applies if you're trying to cut back on something. So if you smoke cigarettes or cannabis and you have a long-term goal to quit smoking, the best way to do that is to set a short-term series of goals to cut back on smoking. So keep track of how much you smoke during the week, kind of write all of that down, and then set a goal to smoke a little bit less the week after that, and then even less the week following that. And you'll continue doing this until you've cut down enough to be able to quit completely without dealing with too many nasty withdrawals. And not to mention, when you're keeping track of how much you're cutting down, you get more motivated seeing how well you're doing, and then you'll go, okay, well, I'm doing really good right now, I should just keep going. And so that's how you rekindle the motivation to follow this goal. Next, is this goal attainable? So with the proper hard work and dedication, are you able to achieve this goal? Now, like we said, if you try to take a really big step towards a long-term goal, you end up feeling intimidated by it. You feel frustrated, angry, and you lose the motivation to follow through with that goal. So if you have a goal to lose weight, instead of demotivating yourself to end up giving up and just binging on carbs, you can take some steps and write these steps down and tell yourself what steps you're going to take, like eating healthier, or cutting carbohydrates, or exercising regularly, staying hydrated. These are some steps that you can take to attain or to achieve this goal. Or let's say, hypothetically, you're trying to save money. You'll probably tell yourself, oh, I have a long-term goal. I want to save $1 million. Now, this isn't very specific. It's not very realistic. And if you're telling yourself, I want to save $1 million within a year, probably not very attainable. But when you set a short-term goal to save a certain amount of money each month, this is not only going to get you closer to that goal, but it's a lot easier, it's a lot more manageable. You're able to keep track of how much money you're saving, and that can motivate you to save more. And so all of this plays into being less likely to get demotivated and more likely to follow through with the goal as well. Is this goal relevant to you? Is it important? Basically, are you setting this goal for the right reasons? So sometimes when we set a goal, we might set it out of emotion or frustration, or maybe some self-hate or feelings of inadequacy, feeling like we're not enough, we're not skinny enough, we're not pretty enough. All of these kind of create a weak foundation for our goal, and it'll cause the goal to eventually fall apart. But if we're setting a goal based on what we think is going to be best for us, and if we're including people in our circle who are going to hold us accountable and help us reinforce that goal, and not just that, but celebrate the little accomplishments that we make, having all of that is going to give you a way better chance at following through. It's going to make you feel more motivated as well. Hopefully by now you can kind of see how setting a SMART goal would make it a lot easier to achieve a goal. But we reached the last step, setting a timeline for this goal. So aside, breaking your long-term goal down into smaller goals, you also want to give yourself a good enough time frame to achieve these goals. You don't want to give yourself too much time to where you eventually get bored or you forget that you had a goal to accomplish, and you don't want to set too little time to where it's kind of intimidating and you feel like you have to rush through it. So I'll give you an example. If you have a goal to lose weight, saying something like, I want to lose 30 pounds this month is kind of doable, but it's not very specific. But if you set a short-term goal of, I want to lose around 5 to 10 pounds by the end of this month, this is a little bit more manageable, and it's going to give you a very good time frame to complete this smaller kind of intermediate goal. And it's very important to remember to always celebrate these small accomplishments or the small steps that you take towards your goal. This is going to also make you feel confident enough to follow through with this goal. And so the right way to achieve a long-term goal is to set a series of short-term goals. So instead of trying to jump up the staircase, you want to make each step kind of a mini goal. And so I want to lose 20 pounds by April. That's my long-term goal. My short-term goals are going to be to lose 5 pounds around each month. And I have a circle of wonderful friends behind me championing me on and telling me, you got this. And so all of that is going to play into me approaching January, having lost 5 pounds, and then February I'll lose 5 pounds, March I'll lose 5 pounds, and by the time April comes, I would have already lost 20 pounds. Now here's the beauty about SMART goals also. Some like a unforeseen benefit of it is, let's say you hit January, you lose 5 pounds, but you feel like, you know what, I could probably lose a little bit more in February if I really buckle down and get my diet straight and I exercise more. I can probably lose 10 pounds by February. And so you try to lose that 10 pounds by February, and let's say you lose 15. That's even better. And then eventually you lose another 15 by March. And so right away, that's 35 pounds right before you've reached April. And let's say you give yourself some time, you see that you've made so much progress and you're like, okay, I'm not going to lose as much for April. You can still hit 45, maybe even 50 pounds by April, which is 30 pounds more than what you initially wanted to lose. And so that can also be a really cool benefit to SMART goal setting, is you can adjust it as you go, and you can always kind of achieve more if you want, or maybe if you've achieved enough to where you're satisfied, you can set a goal to achieve less. Here's another scenario for quitting smoking, and this is kind of like a simpler breakdown of how everything ties in, the whole SMART model, and explaining your goal down here. And so I wanted to quit smoking. Very good goal to have. It's a bit of a long-term goal, and so we break that down into, I want to cut down smoking until it's feasible, it's possible for me to quit cold turkey. And so we're being specific and meaningful by saying, okay, at the moment I smoke around 10 cigarettes a day, and so I'll make it a goal for next week to cut down to 8 cigarettes a day, and then the following week I'm going to cut down to 6 cigarettes a day. And you'll keep this going. Do some math before you get started to see how long it'll take you to get there. And each week, hopefully, you'll be able to smoke 2 less cigarettes a day. Is this goal attainable? Do we have the resources to attain it? Every one of us has some level of willpower, and so that's going to be no problem. But hopefully, we also have some friends and family who love us, who will hold us accountable. That's going to be supplemental to our goal because they're going to be helping us. Is this goal relevant to you? Is it important to you? So you could think, maybe it's becoming harder to breathe, or going up a flight of stairs, you feel winded, and so your health would be the relevance to this goal. It's like, I want to quit because I want to take care of my health. And lastly, you want to make sure that your goal has a manageable time frame. So you'll calculate this at the beginning, but you can extend it if you feel like you need to. But you'll tell yourself something like, come next month, hopefully I'll be down from 10 cigarettes a day to 2 cigarettes a day. And then the week following that, maybe I'll be down to 1 cigarette. Maybe I'll quit completely. I can do that because I've kept track, and I've done so well that hopefully the motivation builds up, and then, it's the last day of my SMART goal calendar, and I'm able to quit cold turkey. And it's very easy because I have all this motivation and I've prepared myself for that. A couple things to keep in mind: that you want to write down your goal on a smart sheet of paper that you can find online, or on just a piece of paper, writing down the specifics of your goal, and tape that to your bathroom mirror, to your fridge, to your PlayStation, anywhere that you're going to be looking every day. Also, no matter how well you plan this, it's very difficult to change something that's already a habit, and so roadblocks will come up. And so make sure that you're prepared for that by having a plan in place to overcome any obstacles that may come your way. Very important, like I kept mentioning, that you want to focus on the small steps that you're taking, and you want to focus on these small wins. Because if you think you're not making any progress, you can become frustrated and lose motivation. And so when you write down your progress and you focus on these small wins, that's going to make you feel a lot better about accomplishing and pursuing this goal. Always remember that even one small step in the right direction is still a step in the right direction. Lastly, as good as it is to be a positive thinker, unfortunately, it's not going to be enough. A lot of times when we fantasize about our future success, this can be good for planning, but it can also trick our mind into thinking that we're approaching that success, or we're approaching our goal. And so we might not be motivated to work as hard. We might not have that sense of urgency to accomplish this goal. And so that can kind of defeat our motivation as well. So it is important to be positive, but you also want to be realistic. You're going to encounter obstacles along the way. You know what your limitations are. You know what has sidelined you before. And so make sure that you're taking note of that. You are going to get around it, but you want to know how will you get around it. And so hopefully I was able to give you guys something very important to help you make decisions. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and I will see you next week. Take care.